I watched the candles melt into the white tablecloth. I saw wine glasses sitting half full around the table. I heard laughter bouncing too easily off the dining room walls. I felt my stomach tighten with each passing minute. My stepmother Marla leaned back in her chair. I watched her sigh loudly enough for everyone to hear. I noticed how she timed it perfectly during a lull in conversation. I saw every head turn toward her. "You know," she said slowly, "after everything we did for Rowan, it's really sad how ungrateful she turned out." I felt every fork pause midair. I heard someone chuckle uncomfortably. I looked at my father sitting at the head of the table. I noticed he didn't look at me. He just kept his eyes on his plate like he always did when Marla spoke about me. Marla smiled. I recognized that smile. I'd seen it my entire life. It was soft and practiced and completely believable. It was the smile that convinced everyone she was the reasonable one and I was the problem. That's when I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone. I set it on the table in front of me. I pressed play on the audio file I'd saved 3 years ago. My name is Rowan Vale. I'm 29 years old. I work as a project manager for a tech company. I live alone in a small apartment across town. And that dinner was about to end a lie that had lasted 20 years. A lie that had shaped my entire childhood. A lie that had convinced everyone I was ungrateful, difficult, and emotionally unstable. I was finally ready to let the truth speak for itself. I grew up learning 3 unspoken rules in my father's house. Don't interrupt adults when they're speaking. Don't contradict the official family story. Don't embarrass the family in front of others. But most importantly, I learned one rule above all others. Don't challenge Marla Vale. My stepmother. The woman who married my father when I was 7 years old, 2 years after my mother died. Marla never raised her voice at me. I can't remember her ever hitting me or leaving physical marks. She was too smart for that. She did something much cleaner and harder to prove. She erased me. Slowly. Systematically. Over years. She erased me from family photos by always positioning herself between my father and me. She erased me from conversations by talking over me until I stopped trying to speak. She erased me from family decisions by discussing everything when I wasn't present. She made me invisible while standing right in front of everyone. And she did it so subtly that nobody noticed. Or maybe they noticed and just didn't care. I learned to stay quiet. I learned to make myself smaller. I learned that survival meant not drawing attention. I believed that if I was good enough and quiet enough and grateful enough, maybe she would finally accept me. I spent 20 years trying to earn a place in my own family. 20 years believing I was the problem. 20 years thinking if I just tried harder, things would get better. I was wrong about all of it. Marla had one particular gift that made her dangerous. She could make cruelty sound like concern. She could package manipulation as motherly wisdom. She could dress up rejection as protection. "Rowan's just very sensitive," she'd tell relatives when I got upset. "We have to be careful with her emotions. She struggles with criticism." When her son Tyler wanted to take guitar lessons, Marla signed him up immediately. When I asked about piano lessons, she'd sigh and say, "Maybe later. We don't want to overwhelm you with too many activities." Tyler got opportunities. I got maybe later and we'll see and let's not push too hard. Tyler received praise for small accomplishments. I got silence for major achievements. When Tyler brought home a B on a test, Marla celebrated. When I brought home straight A's, she'd nod and say, "That's expected." Tyler was encouraged to invite friends over. My friends were too loud or not a good influence or making too much mess. Eventually I stopped inviting anyone. Tyler got patience when he made mistakes. I got lectures about being more responsible and not disappointing the family. I told myself it was fair. I convinced myself Tyler deserved more because he was her biological son. I believed I should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention came my way. I spent years grateful for crumbs while watching my stepbrother feast. And Marla made sure I knew those crumbs were generous. More than I deserved. More than I'd earned. She trained me to expect nothing. And then she convinced everyone I was ungrateful when I wanted anything at all. I was 16 when I finally understood how Marla really saw me. I remember the moment with perfect clarity because it changed something fundamental inside me. I was in the laundry room folding towels. I heard Marla come in behind me. Felt the door close. I turned around and saw her standing between me and the exit. The dryer hummed beside us. I smelled the detergent and fabric softener. I noticed how the small room suddenly felt even smaller with both of us inside. "Rowan," she said calmly, "I think we should be honest with each other." Waited. I didn't know what else to do. "You're not really part of this family," she continued. Her voice was gentle, almost kind. "You know that, right? You're here because your father feels guilty about your mother. But if you behave and don't cause problems, you can stay. Do you understand?" I felt something shatter inside my chest. I watched her face for any sign she was joking or testing me. I found nothing but calm certainty. He nodded. I didn't trust my voice to speak. I didn't know what I would say if I opened my mouth. She smiled and touched my shoulder. "Good. I'm glad we understand each other." She left the laundry room. I stood there for 20 minutes holding the same towel. I felt tears run down my face. I understood for the first time that silence wasn't just survival. Silence was the price of staying. So I paid it. Every day. For years. I stayed quiet and small and grateful. I swallowed every hurt. I accepted every slight. I convinced myself it was temporary. I was wrong. It was training. Training me to never fight back. I moved out the day I turned 19. I found a tiny studio apartment on the other side of town. I worked 3 jobs to pay rent. I slept on a second-hand couch for 6 months before I could afford a bed. I didn't ask my father for help. I didn't complain about my circumstances. I didn't tell anyone what Marla had said to me in that laundry room. I just left and started building a life where I didn't have to stay small. The distance helped. I saw my family less often. I attended mandatory holidays and kept conversations brief. I focused on work and building my career. I made friends who didn't know about my childhood. I created a life separate from them. For a while it worked. I thought I'd escape. I believed that physical distance meant emotional freedom. I assumed they'd just forget about me and move on. Then 3 years ago, Marla called me crying. I remember feeling shocked. I'd never heard her cry before. I'd never heard her sound anything but completely controlled. "Rowan, I need to talk to you about your father," she said. Her voice cracked. "His business is failing. We might lose the house. We've tried everything, but we just need help bridging the gap until things turn around." I felt that old programming kick in immediately. Help the family. Don't let them down. Prove you're not ungrateful. Show you care despite everything. I asked how much they needed. She named a figure. I sent the money that week. I pulled from my savings account that I'd been building for years. 2 months later she called again. More problems. More emergencies. More gaps that needed bridging. I sent more money. Again and again over 6 months. I kept careful records of every transaction. Not because I suspected anything. Just because that's what responsible people do. Documentation was habit from my job. I thought I was helping. I believed I was finally proving my worth to them. I imagined maybe this would change how Marla saw me. I had no idea I was just confirming everything she'd always believed about me. The recording happened by accident. Marla called me one evening after work. I answered while walking to my car. I heard her voice through my earbuds. We talked about another family emergency. Another gap that needed filling. Felt tired. Felt drained. But I agreed to send more money because that's what I always did. The call ended. Or I thought it ended. I put my phone in my pocket and drove home. But Marla hadn't actually hung up. The line stayed connected. And my phone kept recording. I got home and pulled out my phone to check my messages. I saw the call was still active. I was about to hang up when I heard voices. Marla's voice. And my father's voice. Froze. I held the phone to my ear. I heard them talking about me. She sent it? My father asked. Of course she did, Marla replied. I heard the satisfaction in her tone. She always does. She owes us after everything we've done for her. Are we really going to keep doing this? My father said. He sounded uncomfortable. Why not? She's easy to manipulate. Just guilt her a little. Remind her she should be grateful. She won't fight back. She never does. I heard my father sigh. I guess you're right. I'm always right about her, Marla said. I heard her laugh. She's been apologizing for existing since she was 7 years old. That's not going to change now. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stood in my apartment listening to them dissect me like I was a problem they'd solved years ago. The recording went on for 15 more minutes. I saved every second. I backed it up to 3 different places. I listened to it dozens of times over the next few days. Each time I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been bending for 20 years finally stopped bending. After I stopped sending money, the narrative about me changed. I watched it happen in real time through family group texts and second-hand reports from relatives. Rowan's ungrateful. Rowan abandoned the family. Rowan thinks she's too good for us now that she has a decent job. Rowan forgot where she came from. Family dinners became trials where I was the defendant. I'd walk in and feel the judgment before anyone spoke. I'd hear the loaded comments, the pointed silences, the carefully worded disappointments. We thought you'd want to help family, someone would say. After everything we did for you, another would add. I guess success changes people, Marla would sigh. I became the family cautionary tale. The ungrateful daughter who turned her back on the people who raised her. The selfish girl who cared more about money than family. And I stayed silent through all of it. Because silence was still my default. Because fighting back felt impossible. Because I didn't know how to defend myself without sounding exactly like they said I was. Until tonight. Until this dinner where Marla pushed too far. Until she made that comment about me being ungrateful after everything they'd done. I was done staying silent. I was done being rewritten. I was done letting her narrative be the only one anyone heard. I had proof. I had evidence. I had her own words recorded in her own voice saying exactly what she thought of me. And I was finally ready to let everyone else hear it too. Marla dabbed her mouth with her napkin. I watched her set it down carefully beside her plate. I saw her look around the table making sure she had everyone's attention. I really did try so hard with Rowan, she said. Her voice was soft and sad. But you can't help people who don't appreciate sacrifice. Some people are just determined to see themselves as victims. I heard murmurs of agreement around the table. I saw heads nod. I watched my own family buy the story she'd been selling for 20 years. That's when I reached into my purse. Pulled out my phone. I unlocked the screen. I opened the audio file I'd listened to hundreds of times. I set my phone in the center of the table. Press play. I turned the volume all the way up. Marla's voice filled the dining room. Clear. Unmistakable. Undeniable. She sent it. Course she did. She always does. She owes us after everything we've done for her. I watched forks stop moving. I saw faces turn toward the phone. I noticed the room go completely silent except for the recording. Are we really going to keep doing this? My father's voice now. Why not? She's easy to manipulate. Just guilt her a little. Remind her she should be grateful. She won't fight back. She never does. I watched Marla's face drain of color. I saw her reach toward my phone. Pulled it back. Don't, I said quietly. It was the first word I'd spoken since sitting down. Everyone needs to hear this. The recording continued. She's been apologizing for existing since she was 7 years old. That's not going to change now. Marla's laugh came through the speaker. That laugh that had haunted me for weeks after I first heard it. I watched the room freeze. I saw my aunt's hand fly to her mouth. I noticed my cousin staring at Marla with dawning horror. I observed Tyler looking down at his plate like he wanted to disappear. My father's fork clattered against his plate. I heard the sound echo in the silent room. I saw him stare at the phone in disbelief. "That's your voice," my aunt whispered. She looked at Marla. "That's definitely your voice." Marla tried to laugh. I watched her attempt her usual deflection. "That's taken completely out of context. You don't understand what we were discussing." Picked up my phone. I stopped the recording. I looked directly at Marla for the first time in years without feeling small. "It's not out of context," I said calmly. "I have the full 15-minute recording. That was just the clearest part. Would you like me to play the rest?" Marla's mouth opened but nothing came out. I watched her search for words and find none. "Or I could play the recording from last month," I continued, "where you told Tyler that I was just a charity case you tolerated for my father's sake. Or the one from 6 months ago where you laughed about how easy it was to make me feel guilty." I set my phone back on the table. I have recordings of 17 different conversations. All saved. All backed up. All time-stamped and documented. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was final. I watched it settle over Marla like a weight she couldn't shake off. My father finally spoke. "You said those things." His voice was quiet. "All these years you said those things about my daughter?" "Our daughter," I corrected softly. "I'm your daughter too, Dad. I've always been your daughter. You just forgot that somewhere along the way." My father stood up slowly. I watched him look at Marla with an expression I'd never seen before. Betrayal mixed with recognition. Like he was finally seeing something he'd been avoiding for decades. "How long?" he asked her. "How long have you been saying these things about Rowan?" Marla tried to recover. I saw her reach for his hand. "Honey, you have to understand." He pulled away. "Answer the question. How long?" "It's not what it sounds like," Marla said. Her voice was rising now. Getting defensive. "She's making this into something it's not." I spoke before she could continue twisting the narrative. "Since I was 16, Dad. At least that's the first time she said it directly to me. Remember the laundry room conversation, Marla?" I watched Marla's eyes widen. I saw her realize I'd kept that memory all these years. "She told me I wasn't really part of this family. She said I was only here because you felt guilty about Mom. She said if I behaved and didn't cause problems I could stay." My father's face went pale. "She said that to you? When you were 16? In the laundry room? While you were at work? She made sure no one else was around." Kept my voice steady. "I stayed quiet because she trained me to stay quiet. Because silence kept me safe. Because fighting back meant losing the only family I had left." I looked around the table at relatives who'd judged me. Who'd believed Marla's version. Who'd called me ungrateful without ever asking my side. "I'm not playing these recordings to hurt anyone," I said. "I'm playing them so you all understand. The story you've been told about me isn't true. The ungrateful daughter who abandoned her family. That person doesn't exist. She never did." The aftermath came quickly. My father demanded Marla repay every cent I'd sent them. She refused at first. He threatened divorce. She wrote a check the next day. I deposited that check and closed my savings account. I opened a new one at a different bank. I changed my phone number and gave the new one only to people I trusted. The family narrative began to shift. Quietly. Slowly. Relatives who judged me started reaching out with awkward apologies. Accepted some. I ignored others. I learned that forgiveness wasn't mandatory just because someone finally recognized they were wrong. Marla stopped coming to family dinners. Nobody asked why. Nobody demanded she be included. The space she left behind felt lighter somehow. Easier to breathe. My father and I started meeting for coffee once a month. Just the two of us. No Marla. No family buffer. Just uncomfortable, necessary conversations about the past 20 years. "I should have protected you," he said during our third meeting. "I should have seen what was happening. I should have believed you." "You weren't looking," I replied. She made sure you weren't looking. That was her skill. Tyler reached out eventually. We met for lunch. He apologized for benefiting from a system that diminished me. We didn't become close. But we became honest. The money was repaid. The family understood the truth. The narrative was corrected. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just truthfully and permanently. Marla moved out 6 months later. Divorce papers followed. My father seemed smaller without her, but also somehow more present. More aware. More willing to see what he'd missed. I didn't expose Marla to destroy her. I didn't play those recordings for revenge or vindication or dramatic satisfaction. I played them to stop shrinking myself. For 20 years, I'd made myself smaller to fit into the story Marla wrote about me. I'd accepted her narrative because challenging it seemed impossible. I'd stayed silent because silence had always been my survival strategy. But silence had also been my prison. Kept me safe by keeping me invisible. Protected me by erasing me. Gave me peace by denying me a voice. That night at dinner, I finally chose voice over silence. Truth over peace. Visibility over safety. I chose to be seen even if it meant being uncomfortable. I chose to speak even if my voice shook. I chose myself over the version of me that kept everyone else comfortable. The truth didn't fix everything. It didn't erase 20 years of damage. It didn't magically heal relationships or restore lost time. But it did one thing that silence never could. Set me free. I still live alone in my small apartment. I still work the same job. I still keep careful records and maintain boundaries. But something fundamental has changed. I don't apologize for existing anymore. I don't make myself small to accommodate other people's comfort. I don't stay silent when silence means complicity. To speak. Take up space. I refuse to be rewritten. Silence kept me safe once. Taught me survival. It got me through childhood when I had no other options. But I'm not a child anymore. And truth, I've learned, is the only real freedom. If this story sounds familiar to you, if you've spent years shrinking yourself to fit someone else's narrative, if you've stayed silent to keep peace, I see you. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. You matter. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to stay quiet anymore.